It's time again for the Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.
Hi, I'm Scott Jensen, former Assembly Speaker.
I'm Chuck Chvala, former Senate Majority Leader.
And we're the Insiders, and one of our favorite topics is elections. But in Wisconsin, the state where elections are always close, we also have a question about who's in charge of the elections here in the state of Wisconsin. Is Meagan Wolfe in charge of the elections in this state, or is she no longer on the payroll? Chuck, how's this thing going to end up?
Well, first, thank God for Meagan Wolfe. Meagan Wolfe has been a responsible public employee. We have this so often, unfortunately, in our state government. I ran into just hundreds of dedicated public servants. And she's doing a great job administering campaigns. In fact, the biggest complaints about Meagan Wolfe made by Republicans who want to get rid of her and who voted to take her out of office, out of her public office, was that were allegations related to things that were voted on by the elections board. And Meagan was just following their instructions, which is what her job is. So this is a person who is doing the right thing, just trying to make sure we have well-run elections. And she's become caught in this fantasy that there is a problem and that there is widespread fraud in our elections. We all know that's not true. It's factually determined that that is not true. So how can this be a problem? It's a problem because it's a partisan thing. Republicans want this run in a way that will reduce the number of votes that Democrats are able to cast. To me, that's a pretty disturbing thing about elections. What's weird about this is really from the MAGA base. This is from Trump's base. But Robin Vos is all over it. And what it shows you is that there are things in the MAGA base that are appealing to all Republicans, even though Robin Vos and Donald Trump would be like oil and water with each other. You know, Trump tried to get him out with somebody in their primary. So I'm just thankful that Meagan Wolfe is there, and I believe because of the way the law reads and the previous decisions by the Supreme Court, she will remain in place through the next election.
So Republicans are responding to their voters, to the base. They've heard from people. I mean, I think a lot of Republican legislators believe that the elections board made some mistakes in the last round of elections. They gave bad advice a number of times that turned out not to be correct. And they just feel like that Meagan Wolfe kind of looked the other way when places like Milwaukee and Green Bay were inviting people in to help them with the elections. So I understand their concern there, but I don't see how this results in anything other than lawsuits and a court making the decision. They're not going to be able to resolve this any other way. And what I find kind of weird throughout this whole thing is Meagan Wolfe is actually really well known among people in the state of Wisconsin, and she's holding press conferences. She just seems to be a political figure, and I think we're sort of used to having the person in charge of the elections be some nameless, faceless bureaucrat who's just responding to things. But clearly she has, whether she chose to make it herself or she was thrust into the spotlight, she has become sort of a political figure in her own right. And I think that rubs a lot of people, and particularly in the state Senate, wrong.
Just wild, Scott. I mean, think about it for a moment. The only reason she's in the spotlight is because she's got a 3-3 elections board, and the state Senate decided they wanted to fire her. So if the state Senate doesn't want to put her front and center, don't do these things. This is part of the problems that the Republicans get from listening to the MAGA crowd. They think that this is all going to be good for their election. It's not. They're accusing a woman who just comes across, because she is just trying to do her job. And every allegation against her, it's either, well, that's not right, or, well, I was told by the elections board to do it, and I carried out my responsibilities as a leader. And the reason that she's so visible and prominent is because Republicans have made her so. And by the way, the reason they are not happy, she does a good job of responding to the questions. What she says, and what I think is true, she says, look, I just want to help us have the most fair, well-organized, well-run elections that we can have. And she's done a pretty darn good job of it. They can't even find 100 votes that were illegally cast or improperly cast in the state. And by the way, one last thing. With regard to inviting other money in for Green Bay and Milwaukee, What that is was a grant from an entity on the outside that had no particular interest in any result, just wanting to make sure that cities and villages were able to help run their elections. There's been no allegation of any impropriety in the conduct of those elections by Milwaukee or Green Bay. But the MAGA base wants to say, oh, something is terribly wrong. Why is that? Well, because we lost. No, that doesn't work.
So I think the Republican base has not thought through how this story turns out, right? I mean, I think they're like, fire her, get rid of her. She's terrible. She did a bad job. Okay, what do you think is going to happen then? Well, it's going to go to the courts, whether or not the Senate has the ability to do that. And at some point, it will reach the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. And who do you think they're going to side with? The Republicans on this question or the Democrats on this question? They're going to side with the Democrats on this question. So I don't quite understand why we're going through this whole thing if that's what the end result is going to be. And I'm pretty confident that that's where this is going to end up. But I understand every once in a while, people think you have to, you have to fire somebody in order to make change happen.
I think Scott is on the nose with that one, and it's particularly hard for Republicans because the Supreme Court already decided that Mr. Crane could stick around. That's going to be the decision cited as they move forward with Meagan Wolfe, I expect.
Well, we'll see.
You've been listening to The Insiders with Chuck Chvala and Scott Jensen, sponsored by the Wisconsin Counties Association and the Tommy G. Thompson Center on Public Leadership.